The scorching sun beat down mercilessly on Millbrook's dusty Main Street as Emma Blackwood stood trembling outside her father's courthouse, her simple blue dress clinging to her full figure with nervous sweat. At 23, she had become the town's greatest shame in Judge Cornelius Blackwood's eyes, a constant reminder that his bloodline carried weakness. "You disgraceful creature," Judge Blackwood's voice thundered through his office windows, carrying across the street where curious townspeople had gathered. "Your mother's weak blood runs through your veins, making you nothing but a burden to this family's honor." Emma's hands shook as she clutched her worn leather bag containing her few possessions. The morning had started with such hope. She had helped Mrs. Henderson deliver her baby successfully, using knowledge gleaned from her late mother's medical journals. But when she returned home, covered in honest sweat and glowing with purpose, her father's rage had been volcanic. "Standing there like a stuffed pig," he had snarled, his thin face twisted with contempt. "No decent man will ever want you. You've made me the laughingstock of 3 counties, eating us out of house and home while contributing nothing but shame." The memory of her mother's gentle voice echoed in Emma's mind. "Your body carries life well, my darling. Never let anyone tell you otherwise." But those words felt hollow now as her father's hatred burned around her like wildfire. Chief Takota stood silently at the courthouse steps, his massive frame casting a long shadow. Nearly 6.5 feet tall with shoulders that seemed carved from mountain stone, his presence commanded respect even from the bravest townspeople. His chest, bronzed by years under the desert sun, rose and fell steadily as dark eyes studied the scene before him. Long black hair fell to his shoulders, framing a face that belonged in ancient legends, high cheekbones, strong jaw, and eyes that held depths of wisdom and pain. As settlement for the disputed grazing lands, Judge Blackwood announced loudly enough for the gathering crowd to hear, "I offer my daughter to Chief Takota's people. Let her serve them as she has failed to serve this family." Emma's knees nearly buckled. This wasn't about land disputes. This was about her father's final, cruel solution to what he saw as his greatest problem. The gasps from the townspeople cut through her heart like daggers, but not as deeply as her father's next words. "Take her far from here," he continued, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper meant only for Takota's ears. "She eats like a horse and works like a lazy child. Perhaps your people can find some use for her bulk, though I doubt it. Consider her my gift to rid this town of its embarrassment." Takota's expression remained unreadable, but something flickered in his dark eyes, not the cruel satisfaction Emma expected, but something else entirely. When he finally spoke, his English was careful and measured. "You give away what you do not understand," he said simply, his deep voice carrying a strange gentleness that confused Emma. "I accept responsibility for her welfare." "Responsibility?" Judge Blackwood laughed harshly. "Good luck with that burden, Chief. May she serve your people better than she ever served mine." As her father turned away without even a backward glance, Emma felt her world crumbling. 23 years of trying to earn his love, of helping neighbors with their ailments using her mother's knowledge, of keeping house and managing his affairs, all reduced to nothing because her body didn't fit his vision of feminine perfection. Takota approached her with movements that seemed both powerful and careful, like a great wolf approaching a wounded deer. When he reached for her bag, Emma flinched instinctively, expecting roughness. Instead, his large hands took her burden with surprising gentleness. "Come," he said quietly, his voice holding none of the harshness she had braced herself for. "We have far to travel before darkness falls." As they walked toward his waiting horse, a magnificent stallion that seemed almost small beneath his frame, Emma cast one desperate look back at the courthouse. Her father had already disappeared inside, probably celebrating his clever solution to his Emma problem. The townspeople watched with a mixture of pity and morbid curiosity as the judge's fat daughter was led away by the savage chief. Mrs. Henderson, still recovering from her difficult delivery, pressed her hand to her heart and whispered a prayer for Emma's safety. But Emma couldn't hear the prayers or see the sympathy. All she could feel was the devastating reality that she had just been discarded like garbage, traded away as if she were livestock rather than a human being with hopes, dreams, and a heart that had never stopped trying to love a father who saw her as nothing but shame incarnate. As they rode out of Millbrook, dust swirling around them, Emma wondered if this punishment might actually be a mercy. Death in the wilderness seemed preferable to a lifetime of her father's hatred. She had no idea that the man riding beside her had already begun to see something in her that no one else ever had. The desert landscape stretched endlessly before them, a harsh beauty that Emma had never experienced beyond Millbrook's borders. For 3 hours, they had ridden in silence, her body aching from the unfamiliar position on the horse she shared with Chief Takoda. His massive frame provided unexpected warmth against the growing chill as evening approached, but Emma remained rigid with fear and anticipation of cruelty. When Takoda finally stopped near a cluster of red rocks, Emma's entire body screamed with pain. Her soft hands, accustomed only to household tasks and gentle medical work, were raw from gripping the saddle. Her legs, unaccustomed to riding, trembled as she tried to dismount. She slipped, her full figure making the descent awkward and frightening. Emma braced herself for harsh laughter or angry words about her clumsiness. Instead, strong hands caught her waist, steadying her with surprising gentleness until her feet found solid ground. "Rest," Takoda said simply, his deep voice holding no mockery. "Water, then food." Emma watched in amazement as this supposed savage moved with practiced efficiency, building a small fire and preparing a simple meal. His hands, large enough to crush stones, handled dried meat and berries with the careful precision of a craftsman. When he offered her his water skin, she noticed how he waited patiently as she drank, never rushing or showing impatience with her obvious inexperience. "Why?" Emma finally whispered, her voice cracking from disuse and emotion. "Why aren't you cruel?" Takoda finished, settling across the fire from her. In the flickering light, his face looked less intimidating and more thoughtful. "Your father expects cruelty because he knows only cruelty." Emma's eyes filled with tears at the simple truth of his words. "He said I was worthless, a burden, that no one could ever want someone like me." Takoda was quiet for a long moment, studying her face in the firelight. When he spoke, his words carried the weight of personal pain. "I lost my wife 2 winters ago," he said quietly. "She was small, delicate, what your people would call beautiful. But when sickness came, her delicate beauty could not fight it. She died in my arms, light as a bird." Emma's breath caught, sensing she was hearing something sacred and private. "The tribal mothers say my heart died with her," Takoda continued, poking at the fire with a stick. "They speak truth in part. But tonight, watching your father discard you like refuse, I remembered what real ugliness looks like. It is not in your body, Emma Blackwood. It lives in his heart." The sound of her name on his lips, spoken with such unexpected respect, made Emma's tears flow freely. For the first time in her life, someone was defending her rather than explaining her away. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Everyone says your people are savage." Takoda's mouth curved slightly, not quite a smile but something warmer than his previous stoic expression. "Perhaps we are by your father's measure. We value strength over appearance, wisdom over wealth, loyalty over law. We would never trade away family for land or pride." As if to prove his point, he removed his own blanket and offered it to her as the night grew colder. "You shiver," he observed. "Take this." "But what about you?" Emma asked, genuinely concerned. "I am used to cold," he replied, but she noticed how he moved slightly closer to the fire. That simple consideration, his willingness to be uncomfortable for her comfort, struck Emma more powerfully than any grand gesture could have. Her father had never sacrificed even minor convenience for her well-being. "May I ask you something?" Emma said softly, gathering courage from his unexpected kindness. Takoda nodded. "When my father offered me, why did you accept? You could have refused. You could have asked for cattle or horses instead." Takoda stared into the flames for a long time before answering. "In our traditions, we believe the Great Spirit sends us what we need, not always what we expect. Your father saw burden. I saw." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. I saw a woman whose eyes hold kindness despite being shown only cruelty. I saw hands that heal. Yes, I heard about the Henderson woman's difficult birth and how you helped when the doctor failed. Emma's eyes widened in surprise. You knew about that? Little happens in Millbrook that does not reach our ears, Dakota replied. I also know you tend the sick without payment, that you read medicine books by candlelight, that you give your own food to hungry children when you think no one watches. Emma stared at him in amazement. While her father saw only her physical flaws, this supposed savage had been observing her character, her actions, her heart. Your father trades away what he cannot see value in, Dakota continued, his dark eyes meeting hers across the fire. But perhaps the Great Spirit knew where you truly belonged. As the desert stars emerged overhead, brighter than any Emma had ever seen in town, she felt something shifting inside her chest. For 23 years, she had believed her father's assessment of her worth. But here, in this vast wilderness with a man she had been taught to fear, she was beginning to glimpse a different truth. Maybe, just maybe, the punishment her father intended might become something else entirely. The mountain village appeared like a hidden jewel nestled between towering red cliffs, protected from the harsh desert winds by ancient stone walls that seemed to grow from the earth itself. As Dakota led Emma down the winding path, children paused in their games to watch with curious but not unkind eyes. Women looked up from grinding corn and weaving, their expressions thoughtful rather than hostile. Emma clutched her simple blue dress tighter around her full figure, painfully aware of how different she looked from the lean, sun-bronzed people who called this place home. Her pale skin, softened by years of indoor living, seemed almost luminous in contrast to their natural beauty. She felt like a pale, awkward moon trying to shine among brilliant stars. Grandmother, Dakota called softly to an elderly woman who emerged from a dwelling made of wood and animal hides. This is Emma. She will need care and teaching. The old woman, her face a beautiful map of laugh lines and wisdom wrinkles, approached with keen, assessing eyes. She spoke rapidly to Dakota in their lyrical language, occasionally gesturing toward Emma. Though the words were foreign, the tone held curiosity rather than rejection. This is Ayana, my grandmother's sister, Dakota explained to Emma. She says your aura carries both great sadness and great strength. You will stay with her and learn our ways. Before Emma could protest or ask questions, Dakota gently touched her shoulder, the first intentionally comforting gesture she could remember receiving from any man. Trust, he said simply, then walked away, leaving her with the ancient woman who would become her lifeline. Ayana beckoned Emma inside the dwelling, which was surprisingly cool and orderly. Woven mats covered the ground in beautiful patterns, and various herbs hung from the walls, filling the air with earthy, healing scents. The elderly woman pointed to a sleeping area in the corner, then to a clay pot of water, making her welcome clear without needing words. That first week nearly broke Emma's spirit completely. Her soft hands, accustomed only to household tasks and gentle medical work, blistered raw as she attempted to grind corn. The heavy stone mortar seemed to mock her weakness, and the corn kernels scattered everywhere except where they belonged. The tribal women watched her struggles with patient faces, but Emma burned with shame at each failure. When she tried to weave baskets, her clumsy fingers tangled the reeds into knots. When she attempted to help with cooking, she burned the flatbread and oversalted the stew. Each mistake felt like confirmation of her father's harsh words. She was indeed useless, a burden wherever she went. The morning she shattered Ayana's precious water pot was the morning Emma nearly gave up entirely. She had struggled to carry the heavy clay vessel from the stream, her arms shaking with effort. Halfway to the village, it slipped from her grasp and exploded against the rocky ground, sending precious water cascading into the thirsty earth. Emma knelt among the broken pieces, tears streaming down her face as she tried to gather the shards with bleeding fingers. This simple task, carrying water, was something even children accomplished easily. What kind of woman couldn't manage something so basic? A shadow fell across her, and she looked up to find Dakota standing over her, his expression unreadable. Emma braced herself for anger, disappointment, or worse, the same contemptuous dismissal her father had always shown. Instead, Takoda crouched beside her and gently took her injured hand, examining the cuts with careful attention. From a small pouch at his waist, he produced crushed leaves that he pressed against her wounds. The bleeding stopped almost immediately, and a cooling sensation eased the pain. "Leave this," he said softly, indicating the broken pottery. He handed her a smaller water container from his belt, beautifully carved wood that would be much lighter to carry. "Start with what you can manage. Strength grows slowly, like plants in spring." The simple wisdom of his words, delivered without judgment or impatience, struck Emma like lightning. He wasn't lowering expectations out of pity, he was teaching her to build capability gradually, with patience and self-compassion her father had never shown. "Why are you helping me?" Emma asked, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm failing at everything. I can't do anything right." Takoda settled on a flat rock beside her, his massive frame somehow managing to look relaxed and approachable. "When I was boy," he said, "I could not string a bow. Other boys mocked me, said I would never be warrior. My father grew angry, said I brought shame to family name." Emma listened intently, surprised by this revelation of vulnerability from someone so obviously strong and capable. "My grandfather took me to mountain," Takoda continued. "Made me practice every day for one full season. Not to shame me, but to teach me that all strength begins with accepting where you are, then choosing to grow from there." He gestured toward the village below, where Emma could see women working together, sharing tasks and supporting each other. "Your father saw only what you could not do. But I see women who helped bring life into world safely, who reads healing wisdom, who has kind heart despite years of cruelty. These are not small things, Emma. These are foundations upon which great strength is built." That evening, as Emma helped Ayana prepare dinner with her smaller, more manageable tasks, she caught Takoda watching her across the central fire. When their eyes met, he didn't look away. Instead, he nodded slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement and encouragement that warmed her more than the flames ever could. For the first time since arriving, Emma felt a tiny spark of hope. Maybe she could learn. Maybe she could grow. Maybe she could become worthy of the faith this gentle warrior was placing in her. 3 months had transformed Emma in ways she never thought possible. Her soft hands had grown calloused but capable, able to grind corn efficiently and weave baskets that earned approving nods from the tribal women. Her pale skin had bronzed under the mountain sun, and her full figure had grown stronger, more confident in its movements through daily tasks that challenged and strengthened her body. But the most profound change was in her spirit. Where once self-doubt and shame had lived, now purpose and belonging had taken root. The tribe had begun calling her Gentle Strength, a name that made her heart swell with pride each time she heard it spoken with respect and affection. Takoda had been her patient teacher throughout this transformation, appearing each morning to guide her learning with the same quiet wisdom he had shown that first day with the broken water pot. He taught her which plants could heal wounds and which could ease fever. He showed her how to read the mountain's moods and find water in seemingly barren places. Most importantly, he taught her to see herself through eyes unclouded by her father's harsh judgment. On this particular evening, as the harvest moon hung low and golden above the cliffs, Takoda approached Emma as she sat outside Ayana's dwelling, working on a medicine pouch with newly skilled hands. "Come," he said simply, extending his hand to her. Emma had learned to trust that simple word from him. She followed him up a narrow path that wound through the cliffs, climbing higher than she had ever ventured before. Her breathing came easier now than it would have months ago, her body strengthened by daily mountain living. They reached a ledge overlooking the entire valley, where the village fires twinkled like earthbound stars below them. The view was breathtaking, endless desert stretching toward distant mountains, all painted silver by moonlight. Takoda seated himself on a flat rock and motioned for Emma to join him. From a leather pouch, he produced a small wooden flute, its surface carved with intricate patterns that seemed to dance in the moonlight. "My father made this," he explained, running his fingers over the beautiful carvings. "He taught me that music speaks truths that words cannot reach. When my wife died, I could not play for many moons. Tonight, I feel music returning to my heart." He raised the flute to his lips and began to play. The melody that emerged was hauntingly beautiful, a song of loss transformed into hope, of loneliness finding its way to connection, of hearts learning to trust again after betrayal. Emma closed her eyes, letting the music wash over her like healing water. When the final note faded into the mountain silence, she opened her eyes to find Takoda watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "That was beautiful," she whispered. "Like you," he replied, his deep voice certain and warm. Emma's breath stopped entirely. No one had ever called her beautiful. She had been the large one, the disappointment, the burden, but never beautiful. "Takoda, she began, but he gently interrupted. "Your father saw only what you could not do," he said, moving closer to her on the stone ledge. "He could not see your strength when you helped Mrs. Henderson bring her child safely into the world. He could not see your kindness when you shared your food with hungry children. He could not see your wisdom when you learned healing arts from your mother's books." Tears gathered in Emma's eyes as he continued. "He could not see your courage when you chose to trust me rather than flee in terror. He could not see your determination when you practiced grinding corn until your hands bled, refusing to give up despite failure. He could not see your generous heart when you accepted our ways without trying to change us into copies of your people." Emma's tears flowed freely now, but they were different tears than she had ever cried, tears of recognition rather than shame, tears of joy rather than pain. "Most of all," Takoda said, reaching out to gently touch her cheek, "he could not see that your body carries beauty the way mountain carries strength, solid, enduring, capable of sheltering and nurturing life. In our traditions, such women are treasured above all others." "But I'm not small and delicate like your wife was," Emma whispered, old insecurities surfacing. Takoda's expression grew tender. "My wife was beautiful like flower, lovely but fragile. You are beautiful like mountain, strong, enduring, capable of weathering any storm. Both have their place in Great Spirit's design, but you—" He paused, his dark eyes searching her face. "You have heart large enough to heal all the wounds my people carry, mind wise enough to bridge worlds, spirit strong enough to love man who thought his heart died with his wife. Are you saying—" Emma's voice trailed off, hope and disbelief warring in her chest. "I am saying I love you, Emma Blackwood," Takoda said simply. "I accepted you from your father not as burden or punishment, but because something in my heart recognized something in yours. I am saying I want you as my wife, my partner, my equal in all things." Under the vast desert sky, with the village glowing like a constellation below them, Emma felt the last chains of her father's cruelty finally break away. In this man's arms, she had found not just love, but the truth of her own worth, a worth that had nothing to do with the size of her body and everything to do with the size of her heart. "Yes," she whispered, and sealed her new beginning with a kiss under the desert stars. The warning came with the first bite of autumn frost, carried by a young scout whose horse steamed with exhaustion from hard riding. White men approached from the east, soldiers in blue uniforms accompanied by a civilian in expensive clothes whose face twisted with fury and determination. Emma's blood turned to ice. After 8 months of peace, purpose, and love, her father had returned to reclaim what he had so cruelly discarded. "Why?" she whispered to Takoda as they stood together watching the horizon. "He threw me away like garbage. Why would he come back now?" Takoda's strong arm encircled her waist, holding her steady against the storm of fear threatening to overwhelm her. "Perhaps news reached him of your happiness," he said quietly. "Some men cannot bear to see their victims thrive." That night, the tribal council gathered in the sacred circle, their voices rising and falling in heated debate. Emma, now fluent in their language and recognized as Takoda's chosen woman, listened with growing dread as they discussed options. Some argued for immediate relocation deeper into the mountains. Others insisted on standing their ground. This was their ancestral territory by ancient right. Takoda spoke last, his voice carrying the authority of respected leadership. "We will not flee like rabbits," he declared. "But we will not attack unless forced to defend ourselves. This white man's quarrel is with me and with the woman I love. We will face it with dignity. After the council dispersed, Dakota found Emma sitting by the stream where she had once struggled to carry water and where she now came to gather healing plants with confident skill. The transformation in her was remarkable. Gone was the frightened, shame-filled woman her father had discarded. In her place sat a confident healer, beloved by the tribe, strong in body and spirit. "You must choose," Dakota said gently, settling beside her on the smooth rocks. "If your father demands you return, what will your heart tell you?" 8 months ago, Emma would have leaped at any chance to return to civilization, to hot baths and proper beds, to familiar foods and English conversation. Now the thought filled her with horror. "My place is here," she said firmly, taking his large hand in her smaller but no longer soft ones. "With your people. With you. This is my home now." Something flickered in Dakota's dark eyes, relief, perhaps, mixed with fierce protective love. "Then we will face this together, my brave woman." The soldiers arrived at dawn, 12 men on horseback led by a stern-faced lieutenant with hard eyes that missed nothing. Behind them rode Judge Cornelius Blackwood, looking as imperious and contemptuous as ever despite the dust of travel. His thin face twisted with disgust when he spotted Emma among the gathered villagers. "Emma," he called out, his voice carrying across the village with familiar authority. "Thank God you're alive. I've come to rescue you from these savages before they corrupt you further." Emma stepped forward, her hand firmly clasped in Dakota's, her chin raised with newfound dignity. "I need no rescue, Father. I am exactly where I choose to be." Judge Blackwood's face darkened with the same rage she remembered from childhood. "Don't be absurd. Look at yourself, dressed in animal skins, living in filth with these creatures. You've clearly been bewitched or threatened into compliance." "I have been loved," Emma replied, her voice stronger than she had ever used with him before. "For the first time in my life, I have been truly valued and respected." "Respected?" Judge Blackwood's voice rose to a furious pitch. "You are my daughter, bearing my name, and you will return home immediately. I've arranged a suitable marriage to banker Thornfield. He's willing to overlook your deficiencies in exchange for a substantial dowry." The familiar pattern, another man willing to overlook her size for money, another transaction where her feelings meant nothing. Emma felt Dakota tense beside her, his warrior's instincts responding to the threat in her father's words. "No," Emma said simply. "I choose to stay here with the man who loves me as I am, not in spite of what I am." "Lieutenant Morrison," Judge Blackwood snapped, turning to the military officer. "Arrest this savage for kidnapping and retrieve my daughter immediately." The lieutenant looked uncomfortable, his eyes moving between the obviously voluntary Emma and the peacefully assembled but alert warriors surrounding Dakota. "Sir, if your daughter is staying voluntarily, she is not in her right mind." Judge Blackwood exploded. "She has always been weak-willed and easily manipulated due to her condition. I am her father and legal guardian. You will retrieve her now." In that moment, Emma saw her entire past crystallized in her father's words. He had never seen her as a person, only as a problem to be solved, a burden to be managed, a defect to be hidden or discarded. "My condition," she repeated slowly, a lifetime of pain and anger rising in her voice. "You mean the condition of being born the daughter of a man incapable of love? The condition of never being good enough, thin enough, perfect enough to earn even basic kindness from my own father?" She stepped forward, and Judge Blackwood actually retreated from the fierce dignity blazing in her eyes. "I found something here you never gave me, Father. Respect. Purpose. A man who sees my strength instead of my weakness, my beauty instead of my flaws, my worth instead of my failures." Behind her, the entire tribe stood in silent support, men, women, and children who had welcomed her, taught her, and grown to love her. "This woman," Dakota declared, his commanding voice carrying across the tension-filled space, "is under my protection and chooses her own path. I suggest you respect her choice and leave in peace." Emma turned her back on her father and walked into Dakota's protective embrace, choosing love over blood, acceptance over approval, and her true family over the man who had never deserved the title of father. If this story of unexpected love and transformation touched your heart, drop a comment below and tell us, where in the world are you listening from? Are you Team Emma or were you skeptical of Chief Takoda at first? We love hearing from our global family. And if you're enjoying these Wild West tales of unlikely romance, give us a thumbs up. It truly helps us bring you more stories of love, strength, and second chances. What story should we tell next? Let us know in the comments. Your suggestions fuel our creativity. Thank you for being part of our storytelling journey. Until next time, remember, sometimes our greatest blessings come disguised as our worst punishments.